Gunshots cracked the night. Paula found the stranger dying in the gutter and dragged him into the dark, never seeing the serpent tattoo that marked him untouchable. The February downpour slashed sideways through the busted awning of Sal's all-night diner, needling Paula's threadbare hoodie like icy pins. Her stomach growled over the sizzle of grease inside. Tonight's tips, 11 crumpled dollars and a subway token, wouldn't stretch to a warm bed. One more hour, she chanted under her breath, shoulders hunched against the wind that smelled of wet asphalt and fryer oil. The alley behind the diner was her gauntlet home. 3 dumpsters, a mural of a faded Virgin Mary, the same flickering sodium lamp that buzzed like a dying insect. She'd memorized every puddle, every loose brick. Tonight the rhythm broke, a wet thud, then a hiss of tires peeling away. Paula's fingers tightened around the broken bottleneck she carried for comfort. City rules, hear trouble, cross the street. But the sound came again, ragged, human, final. She edged forward, boots squelching. Behind the middle dumpster, wedged against the brick, a man slumped like a discarded marionette. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair plastered to a pale forehead. The suit, once charcoal, now black with blood, clung to broad shoulders. A gold watch glinted under the lamp, absurdly untouched. One hand still clutched the lapel as if propriety mattered while dying. "Hey, mister." Her voice cracked, smaller than the rain. His eyes fluttered, storm gray and glazed with pain, but something defiant burned there. "Can you hear me?" No answer except a wet cough that painted red on his lips. Paula's pulse hammered. Sirens were a myth in this zip code. Cops came after bodies cooled. She should vanish. Instead she knelt, the puddle soaking her knees crimson. "Stay with me, okay?" She yanked her hoodie over her head, wadded it, pressed it hard against the hole in his chest. His blood was warmer than the rain. A glint of metal caught the light as she shifted him, a polished pistol sliding from his waistband, initials JAM engraved in cruel cursive. Paula's breath hitched. Not a mugging victim. Trouble in tailored wool. Still, his weight sagged against her like surrender. 10 minutes, she lied to herself. "There's a storeroom. Dry." She hooked his arm over her shoulder, dragged him through the dark, his expensive shoes scraping sparks on the concrete. The storeroom smelled of bleach and old coffee grounds. She eased him onto flattened cardboard, heart jackhammering. He was heavy, solid muscle under the ruin of silk. As she peeled the shirt to pack the wound tighter, black ink coiled across his chest, a serpent devouring its own tail, elegant and lethal. Outside, engines growled, slow, predatory. Headlights swept the alley mouth. Paula killed the single bulb, crouched in the dark, and whispered to the unconscious stranger, "Whatever you did, it's coming for both of us now." Morning leaked through the cracked skylight in watery blades. Paula hadn't slept. Every creak of the building sounded like footsteps. The man's breathing had steadied, but the hoodie bandage was soaked through again. She was replaying the serpent, the gun, the watch, when the diner's ancient TV crackled to life through the thin wall. Shootout in Hell's Kitchen. James Moretti, heir to the Moretti syndicate, missing, presumed. The name hit like a second bullet. Paula's knees buckled. She stared at the stranger on her cardboard throne, then at her own blood-crusted hands. The most feared man in New York had bled out on her mercy. He stirred, a low groan. Gray eyes opened, focused, feral. "You," he rasped, voice like gravel over glass. "Why?" Paula swallowed. "Because no one else would." He studied her for a long second, something fractured behind the ice. Then his head fell back, and the rain started again outside. Soft, relentless, washing the city clean for whatever came next. She'd always told herself kindness was a luxury she couldn't afford. Growing up in group homes, on subway grates, under bridges, every soft impulse had been punished. Yet here she was, 19 years old with nothing but a stolen sewing kit and a conscience that wouldn't shut up, hiding the devil himself in a diner basement. And as the first siren wailed in the distance, Paula realized the real storm hadn't even started. The night that changed everything is just the beginning. Speech balloon comment. Would you have saved the stranger or kept walking? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now because this story is about to take off. The rain had softened to a whisper against the tin roof, but inside the storeroom it sounded like 1,000 fingers tapping to be let in. Paula crouched beside the stranger, knees aching on the cold concrete, hoodie now a sodden crimson rag pressed to his chest. The bullet had torn a hole the size of a silver dollar just below his collarbone. Blood still seeped, slow but stubborn, as if the night itself refused to let him die. She needed supplies.
Now.
The diner's back door was 20 feet away, but it might as well have been a mile. Every shadow between here and there could hide a gun. Still, she eased the hoodie away, fresh red welled instantly, and repressed it harder. His pulse fluttered under her palm, too fast, too light. Hold on, she muttered. Just a few more minutes. The storeroom was a graveyard of forgotten things. Cracked plastic crates, a mop bucket crusted with something that used to be soup, a first aid kit from the Clinton administration. She tore it open. Gauze older than she was, half a roll of duct tape, one alcohol wipe gone brittle. Useless. She needed thread, needle, something to close the wound before he bled out on her cardboard throne. Paula crept to the door, cracked an inch. The alley glistened black and empty. Sal kept a sewing kit behind the register for patching aprons. He'd never notice it gone. She slipped out, barefoot to keep quiet, the broken bottleneck left behind like a bad habit. The rain kissed her scalp, cold and clean. She tasted iron, his blood, her fear. Inside the diner, the night cook was gone, radio murmuring Springsteen to the empty stools. Paula ghosted past the counter, fingers closing around the small tin box. Thread, needle, safety pins. On impulse, she snagged the half-empty bottle of Stolichnaya wedged behind the dishwasher, Sal's emergency stash. Antiseptic, painkiller, liquid courage. She was back in the storeroom before the song ended. The stranger hadn't moved.
Good.
Or bad. She couldn't decide. Kneeling again, she poured vodka over her hands, hissing at the sting of a cut she hadn't noticed. Then she doused the needle, the thread, the wound itself. He jerked, a low animal sound escaping his throat. Easy, she whispered. This is gonna suck for both of us. The first stitch was the worst. Skin resisted like wet leather. The needle slipped, pricked her thumb. Blood, hers, his, mingled on the thread. She bit her lip until she tasted copper and kept going. 2 stitches, 3. The hole narrowed to a grim mouth. She tied off, snipped, taped a folded square of ancient gauze over the mess. It wasn't surgery. It was desperation wearing a nurse's mask.
Done.
She sat back on her heels, hands trembling so hard the vodka bottle rattled against the floor.
Leave.
The word pulsed in her skull, like a migraine. Take the gun, the watch, anything of value, and disappear before sunrise. People like him didn't wake up grateful. They woke up dangerous. She'd seen it in foster homes, on subway platforms, in the eyes of men who offered warm coats and asked for things she was too young to name.
She stood.
1 step toward the door.
2.
His face stopped her. Even unconscious, the angles were sharp. Cheekbones cut from marble, a mouth that looked used to giving orders. A faint scar sliced through his left eyebrow, pale against the stubble. But it was the crease between his brows. Pain, yes, but something deeper.
Fear.
Real, raw, the kind that lived in bones. Paula's stomach twisted. She knew that look. She'd worn it at 12, curled behind a laundromat dryer while sirens screamed for someone else. She took a 3rd step and couldn't. Damn it, she breathed, sinking back down. That was when she found the gun. It had slid from his waistband while she stitched, half hidden under his hip. Matte black, heavier than it looked. The grip was worn smooth, used often, cared for. Engraved on the slide in flowing script, Jam. The initials matched the watch.
James.
Or close enough. Her fingers closed around it before her brain caught up. Cold metal, real weight. She could pawn it for a month of motel rooms. Or use it if whoever shot him came back. Both thoughts made her sick. She tucked it into the waistband of her jeans, under the oversized flannel she'd stolen from a shelter lost and found. The barrel pressed cold against her spine, a secret heartbeat. "You're trouble, aren't you?" she whispered to the unconscious man. "Why do I always save the wrong people?" Outside, an engine growled, low, deliberate. Headlights swept the alley mouth, painting the storeroom walls in slow white arcs. Paula killed the lantern. Darkness swallowed them. Boots on wet pavement. 2 sets. Maybe 3. Voices, muffled but urgent. Moretti's kid was hit here. Check the diner. Her breath stopped. Moretti. The name from the TV, the one that made cops look away and shopkeepers pay protection with smiles. James Moretti. The man bleeding on her floor was a headline, a ghost story, a walking bounty. The doorknob rattled. Paula pressed herself flat against the crates, one hand over James's mouth in case he groaned. His stubble scraped her palm. His breath was hot, ragged. The door held. Sal padlocked it after closing, but the men outside weren't patient. A shoulder hit wood.
Once. Twice.
She reached for the gun, thumb finding the safety. Her hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped it. Then, tires screeching away. Another car, louder, faster. Gunfire cracked, 2 sharp pops, then silence. The searchers scattered like roaches. Paula didn't move until the alley was quiet again. Minutes, maybe hours. Her heartbeat was a drum solo in her ears. James stirred beneath her palm. His eyes opened, storm gray, fever bright. For a second, he looked straight through her, pupils blown wide. Then they focused, and the defiance was back, colder now. "You still here?" he rasped. "Not a question. Looks like." Her voice cracked. She eased her hand away. "Try not to die. I just sewed you up with diner thread." A ghost of something amusement flickered across his face. "Name? Paula." She hesitated. "You?" He closed his eyes. "Doesn't matter." Outside, thunder rolled, low and distant. Neon flickered through the skylight, painting his cheekbones red, then blue, then red again. Paula pulled the blanket higher over his shoulders. It smelled of mildew and fryer grease, but it was something. "Stay awake," she said. "Talk to me." "About what?" His voice was gravel dragged over glass. "Anything. Favorite color. Worst food. Why you're bleeding in my alley." He huffed, almost a laugh. "Black. Oysters. Long story. Start with a short version." He didn't. His head lolled. The fever was winning. Paula shook him gently.
"Hey, James."
"Stay." His eyes snapped open at the name. "Don't."
"Saw the
JM then." She nodded at the gun, now hidden again. "Figured it out." Silence stretched, thick as the humidity. Somewhere a siren wailed, Dopplered into nothing. "You should go," he said finally, "before they come back." They already did. She swallowed. "I'm still here." He studied her, or tried to, through the haze. "Why?" Paula had no answer. Not one that made sense. She busied herself checking the bandage, adjusting the vodka-soaked cloth. His skin burned under her fingers. "Sleep," she said. "I'll keep watch." He was out within minutes, breath evening into something almost peaceful. Paula sat cross-legged beside him, gun across her lap, and listened to the city breathe. Hours bled away. Rain tapered to drizzle. Neon buzzed. Sirens came and went. At some point, she found herself tracing the serpent tattoo with her eyes, how the scales caught the light, how the tail disappeared under the bandage. A warning in ink. Dawn crept in, gray and reluctant. James hadn't moved. His pulse was stronger. The bleeding had slowed to a weep. Paula's own eyes burned with exhaustion, but she couldn't look away from his face. Clean lines, hard jaw, a smear of dried blood on his collar like war paint. What kind of man carried both a gun and fear in his sleep? She didn't know yet, but she was about to find out. The first blade of morning slid through the skylight and cut across James's face, turning the dried blood on his collar into rust. Paula jerked awake from the half-doze she'd fallen into, neck stiff, gun still heavy across her thighs. The storeroom smelled of iron, vodka, and wet cardboard. For one disorienting second, she thought the night had been a fever dream. Then the stranger's chest rose, slow and deliberate, and the dream snapped into nightmare. He hadn't stirred since the fever pulled him under.
Good.
It meant the stitches held. It also meant she was still alone with whatever came next. Her stomach cramped, a hollow reminder that hunger didn't care about gunshots or Mafia heirs. The $11 in her pocket were now $8, $2 spent on a stale bagel yesterday, and the diner's kitchen was 20 feet of open risk away. Coffee, at least. Something hot to keep her hands from shaking. Paula eased the gun into the waistband again, pulled the flannel down to hide the bulge. She cracked the storeroom door. The alley lay slick and empty, dawn painting the puddles the color of weak tea. No black cars.
No boots.
Just the city exhaling steam from manhole covers. She slipped inside the diner. The place was a tomb before the breakfast rush, stools upside down on the counter, the jukebox dark, the smell of bleach fighting last night's grease. Sal wouldn't be in until 6. The night cook had vanished with the sunrise. Paula ghosted behind the counter, poured coffee into a chipped mug with one hand, stuffed 2-day-old croissants into her hoodie pocket with the other. The pot gurgled like it was gossiping. The ancient TV above the register flickered to life on its own, Sal's cheap timer for the morning news. Paula reached to kill it, then froze. A red banner slashed across the screen, breaking. Moretti Heir missing after Midtown shootout. The anchor's voice was crisp, practiced panic. Authorities confirm a violent exchange of gunfire near West 48th just after midnight. James Moretti, 34, sole heir to the Moretti family's vast holdings, was last seen fleeing the scene in critical condition. Police believe rival factions may be involved. A source close to the investigation tells us the younger Moretti is presumed dead, though no body has been recovered. A grainy photo filled the screen. The man on her floor, cleaner, sharper, wearing a tuxedo and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Same storm gray eyes. Same scar through the left brow. Paula's coffee sloshed over the rim, scalding her knuckles. She didn't feel it. The serpent tattoo flashed behind her eyes, black ink curling like smoke. The gun, JM engraved in cruel cursive. The suit that cost more than she'd earn in a year, now shredded and soaked with blood. The watch still ticking on his wrist, indifferent to the hole in his chest. Everything clicked with a sound like a round chambered. James Moretti. Not a businessman. Not a victim. The prince of New York's oldest ghost story, the one whispered in back rooms and precincts alike. The man who could make a judge disappear with a phone call. The man whose name made Sal triple-lock the register on the 1st of every month. And she dragged him into a storeroom like a stray dog. The mug trembled so hard coffee painted brown streaks down the counter. Paula set it down before it shattered. Her reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser looked like a stranger, eyes too wide, mouth a bloodless line. Run, the reflection said. Run now. Pawn the watch, take the gun. Vanish before the city wakes up. She pictured the black cars from last night. The way the men moved, efficient, hungry. If she turned him in, they'd know who called. If she left him, they'd find him anyway. And then they'd find her. Her compassion was a noose. She'd tied it herself. Paula shoved the croissants deeper into her pocket, grabbed a third for good measure. The TV cut to a press conference, some deputy commissioners sweating under flashbulbs, promising answers. She killed the volume with a shaking thumb. Silence rushed back in, thick as the steam curling from the coffee pot. Back in the storeroom, she locked the door and leaned against it, breath sawing in and out. James hadn't moved. The rise and fall of his chest was the only proof he still belonged to the living. She sank beside him, knees hitting concrete. What did I do? The words scraped out, barely audible. Jesus, what did I do? His face gave nothing away. Fever had smoothed the hard lines. He looked younger, almost vulnerable. The serpent tattoo peeked above the bandage like a dare. Paula unwrapped a croissant, broke it in half. The flakes fell like snow. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The coffee followed, bitter and scalding. Fuel. She needed fuel if she was going to think. Options circled like wolves. 1. Call 911.
Anonymous tip.
Let the uniforms deal with the fallout. They'd trace the call. Or the shooters would. Dead either way. 2. Dump him in the river. Walk away clean. She'd see his face every time she closed her eyes. And the river never kept secrets. 3. Keep him hidden. Nurse him. Hope he woke up grateful instead of lethal. Insane. But her hands were already moving, checking the bandage, adjusting the blanket. Compassion outweighed fear the way a candle outweighs a storm. Small, stupid, impossible to extinguish. She pulled the mildewed blanket higher, tucking it under his chin like he was a child instead of a killer. His skin still burned, but the bleeding had stopped. Good. She'd bought time. Maybe hours. Maybe less. Outside, a garbage truck growled to life, metal jaws chewing the night's refuse. The city was waking up, and with it, the hunt. Paula rested her forehead against her knees. The gun pressed cold against her spine, a reminder and a promise. You're safe, she whispered to the unconscious man. For now. The words tasted like a lie, but she said them anyway. The storeroom door rattled like a warning. Paula's head snapped up from the concrete where she'd been counting cracks in the floor. Mid-morning light slanted through the skylight, catching dust motes in slow-motion spirals. James's breathing had shifted, shallow, rapid, the kind that came right before waking. She'd been waiting for it, dreading it. His eyes flew open, storm gray, wild, scanning corners like a cornered wolf. 1 second he was still, the next he lunged, hand clawing for the empty space at his hip where the gun should have been. Paula screamed, a sharp, startled sound that ricocheted off the walls. He was on her before she could scramble back, forearm like iron across her throat, slamming her spine into the cinder block. Who sent you? The words scraped out, raw from disuse and fever. His pupils were blown wide, black swallowing gray. Blood seeped fresh through the bandage, staining his shirt in a slow, accusing bloom. Paula's hands flew to his wrist, nails digging in. I pulled you out of the street, idiot. Her voice cracked high with panic, but the anger underneath was real. You were dying. He blinked.
Once. Twice.
The pressure eased a fraction. Recognition flickered, slow, reluctant. The alley. The rain. Her hands on his chest. He let go so suddenly she slid down the wall, knees buckling. James staggered back, one palm braced on a crate, the other clutching his side. Fever sweat beaded on his forehead. The serpent tattoo flexed with every ragged breath. You stitched me, he rasped, like the idea was foreign. Someone had to. Paula rubbed her throat, heart jackhammering. Lie down before you rip it open. He didn't. He stared at her. Really stared, like she was a puzzle with missing pieces. The silence stretched, electric and humming. Outside, a delivery truck backfired. They both flinched. Why? The question came softer now, almost lost under the pain. Why would you do that? Paula swallowed. The answer felt too big for the cramped room. Because no one else would. Something shifted in his face, cracked, just a hairline fracture in the ice. He sank back onto the cardboard, movements careful, like his body had betrayed him and he hadn't forgiven it yet. Paula grabbed the half croissant from earlier, broke it in two. Her hand still trembled. Flakes fell like snow onto the blanket.
Eat.
She held out the larger piece. You lost blood. Need calories. He took it with fingers that shook worse than hers. Their knuckles brushed, static, unintended. He tore into the pastry like a man who'd forgotten food existed. Crumbs clung to the stubble along his jaw. When he finished, he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and muttered, "Thanks." The word sounded rusty and used. Paula wondered when he'd last said it, and meant it. She poured coffee into the mug's cracked lid, handed it over. He drank in silence, eyes never leaving her face. The dynamic settled between them. Wary, raw, magnetic. Two stray cats circling the same scrap of warmth. You hid the gun, he said finally. Not a question. Figured you'd want it back when you stopped trying to kill me. A ghost of a smirk tugged at his mouth. Smart. Paula shrugged, but her pulse hadn't slowed. Also figured whoever shot you might come looking. Wanted leverage. His smirk died. He leaned his head back against the crate, eyes closing. They will. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. Paula busied herself checking the bandage. Fresh red seeped through, but slower. She peeled it back, cleaned the edges with the last of the vodka. He hissed but didn't pull away. You need antibiotics, she said. Real ones. Not diner thread and prayer. Later. His voice was fading, fever pulling him under again. You should have left me there. The words hung in the air, heavy as the gun at her waist. Paula watched his chest rise and fall, slower now, the defiance draining with the adrenaline. His lashes cast shadows on sharp cheekbones. The scar through his brow looked silver in the light. She tucked the blanket higher, fingers lingering on the serpent's tail. Maybe I should have, she whispered to the quiet room. But she didn't move. Enjoying the ride? Hit that red heart like if James and Paula's electric first clash gave you chills. Drop a comment. Team Mercy or Team Survival? Subscribe so you don't miss. The afternoon dragged its claws across the sky, turning the skylight a bruised violet. Paula sat with her back to a crate, knees drawn up, the gun balanced across them like a sleeping snake. James had slipped into a fitful doze, breath whistling through cracked lips. Every twitch of his fingers made her flinch. Every siren in the distance sounded like it was coming for them. She'd counted the cracks in the floor again. Then the bullets in the magazine, 15, one in the chamber. Then the exits, one door, one skylight too high, one vent too small. None of them felt like freedom. Outside, tires crunched gravel. Paula's head snapped up. 2 black sedans, sleek, tinted, wrong for the zip code, eased to the curb like sharks circling chum. Doors opened in practiced silence. For men unfolded, suits crisp despite the humidity, shoes that cost more than the diner's monthly take. One of them, tall, lantern-jawed, scar hooking from ear to mouth, she recognized from the news clip. Vincent Vinny Knives Russo, Moretti family enforcer. The kind of face that made witnesses forget details. Her stomach dropped through the floor. James's eyes opened. No groggy transition, just instant predatory focus. He pushed up on an elbow, wincing as the stitches pulled. They're not my men, he rasped, voice low and lethal. Cousin's crew. Paula was already moving. Freezer room.
Now.
She hauled him up, slinging his arm over her shoulder. He was heavier awake, all muscle and stubborn pride. Blood seeped warm through her flannel where his side pressed against hers. The freezer room was a walk-in tomb at the back. Metal shelves, frost-rimed boxes of frozen fries, a lock that worked from the inside. She shoved him in, yanked the chain for the single bulb. Stay quiet. Stay down. James caught her wrist, grip iron despite the fever. Give me the gun. No, she pulled free. You can barely stand. Boots hit the alley pavement. Voices clipped and urgent. Fan out. He's hurt. Can't have gone far. Paula killed the light, eased the door until the latch clicked. Darkness swallowed them. The freezer's chill bit through her hoodie. James's breath fogged in short, controlled bursts. She pressed her ear to the metal. The storeroom door splintered under a kick. Clear. A second kick, closer. The freezer handle rattled. Paula's heart slammed against her ribs. She wedged a metal tray under the handle, braced her shoulder against it. James leaned beside her, one hand clamped over his wound, the other reaching for a cleaver on the shelf. His knuckles were white. The door shuddered.
Once. Twice.
Got a girl in there? Vinny's voice, oily and amused. Come out, sweetheart. Boss just wants a word. Paula's reply was a silent snarl. She scanned the shelves. Industrial cleaner, bleach, a box cutter. Weapons, if it came to it. The handle stopped moving. Footsteps retreated. False hope she knew better. Then a crash, the main storeroom door giving way. They were inside. James sagged, forehead against the cold metal. "Go out the vent," he whispered. "Leave me." "Shut up." Her voice shook, but her spine was steel. A shadow passed the freezer's frosted window. Vinny's silhouette, phone to his ear. "Yeah, blood trail, ends here." Someone patched him up. A pause. "Understood. Clean sweep."
Clean sweep.
The words landed like a fist. Paula's mind raced. The vent was too small for James, too high for her without a boost. The skylight, same problem. They were rats in a trap. The handle rattled again, harder. Metal screamed. The tray bent. James straightened, cleaver raised. Fever glazed his eyes, but the set of his jaw was pure predator. When it opens, you run.
I'll.
The door burst inward. Vinny filled the frame, scar livid under the bulb. His gaze locked on Paula first, then James. Surprise flickered, replaced by a grin sharp as broken glass. There's the prince. And the Good Samaritan. He lunged. Paula swung the box cutter. Wild, desperate. The blade sliced air. Vinny caught her wrist, twisted until bones ground. Pain exploded white-hot. The cutter clattered to the floor. He shoved her back against the shelves, cans raining down. James moved like a ghost, cleaver arcing. Vinny ducked, drove a fist into James's wound. James roared, staggered, but brought the cleaver down. It bit deep into Vinny's shoulder. Blood sprayed, hot and coppery. Vinny howled, backhanding James across the freezer. James hit the wall, slid down, cleaver clattering. His eyes rolled, but he tried to push up, legs betraying him, blood pooling beneath. Paula screamed, rage, not fear, and launched herself at Vinny. She clawed his face, nails raking the scar. He swore, grabbed a fistful of her hair, slammed her head against the shelf. Stars burst. She tasted blood. Enough. Vinny's partner appeared in the doorway, gun raised. Boss wants him alive. Her, disposable. Paula's vision tunneled. She saw James's hand inching toward the fallen cleaver, saw the tremor in his fingers. Saw Vinny reach for his own pistol.
She did the only thing left.
Kicked the tray under the door hard. It shot across the floor, tripped the second thug. His shot went wide, pinging off metal. Paula dug for the box cutter, came up slashing. The blade caught Vinny's forearm, shallow, but enough. He cursed, recoiled. James surged up, impossible strength from a dying man, wrapped an arm around Vinny's throat from behind. The enforcer gurgled, clawing at the chokehold. James's face was bone-white, lips pulled back in a snarl. Blood poured from his side, but he held. Paula scrambled to James, caught him as his knees buckled. Vinny went limp, dropped like a sack. The second thug was still tangled in the tray, gun skittering across the floor. "Go," James rasped, shoving her toward the door.
Now.
She dragged him instead, out of the freezer, through the wrecked storeroom, past the splintered door. The alley was empty, sedans idling but unattended. She chose the closer one, yanked the back door open, shoved James inside. He collapsed across the seat, blood smearing leather. Paula slid behind the wheel, keys still in the ignition, arrogance or oversight. The engine roared to life. She peeled out, tires screaming, rearview mirror filling with the diner shrinking behind them. James lay curled on the seat, breath shallow, cleaver forgotten on the floor mat. Paula's hands shook on the wheel, but she didn't slow. She nursed him with one eye on the road, pressing her flannel to the reopened wound, whispering curses and prayers in the same breath. Furious. Protective.
Both.
Blocks blurred, warehouses, chain link, the Hudson glinting like a blade. She found an abandoned lot, killed the engine behind a dumpster. Silence rushed in, broken only by James's wet breathing. She climbed into the back, knelt beside him. "Stay with me, damn it." His eyes fluttered open, gray glassed with pain. "Who are you really, James?" The question tore out of her, raw and shaking. He coughed, red flecking his lips. "Someone who doesn't get second chances." The city lights flickered on in the distance, a million eyes watching. Paula looked out the cracked window at the dark alley they'd left behind, the one that used to be her whole world. It wasn't safe anymore. For either of them. The warehouse squatted on the edge of the Hudson like a forgotten god, windows blind with grime, ribs cracked open to the night. Paula had lived here once, 3 weeks in February, when the group home kicked her out for fighting and the shelters filled up. She knew every loose board, every rusted beam that wouldn't squeal. She guided the stolen sedan through a gap in the chain link, killed the engine behind a mountain of splintered pallets. James was unconscious again, head lolling against the window, blood crusted on his chin like war paint. The back seat looked like a crime scene. Paula's hand shook as she checked his pulse. Steady, but weak. She dragged him out, slung his arm over her shoulder, and half-carried him across the oil-stained concrete. Inside smelled of rust and river rot. Moonlight striped the floor through broken skylights. She eased James onto a nest of old moving blankets she'd left behind months ago, still there, mildewed but soft. He groaned when his back hit the ground, eyes fluttering but not opening. Paula's legs gave out. She sat hard, knees to chest, and let the silence swallow her. The city was a low growl beyond the walls, sirens, horns, the occasional pop of a backfiring truck. None of it reached them here. She'd chosen this place because no one else wanted it. Now it felt like the last room on Earth. She built a small fire in a dented metal drum, cardboard, a broken chair leg, a page from a waterlogged magazine. The flames painted the warehouse gold and shadow. James stirred, drawn by the heat. His eyes opened, storm gray, clearer now, the fever receding. Where? His voice cracked like dry ice. Sure. Paula knelt, pressed a cracked bottle of water to his lips. Drink slow. He obeyed, throat working. When he finished, he tried to sit up. Pain twisted his face. He collapsed back with a hiss. Easy. She adjusted the blankets, checked the wound. The stitches had torn in 2 places, but the bleeding was sluggish. You're lucky the cleaver missed the artery. Lucky, he echoed, bitter. Right. Silence stretched, thick with smoke and unspoken things. Paula fed the fire another splintered slat. Sparks spiraled up into the dark. James spoke first. My cousin Marco set the meat. Neutral ground, old shipping office on 48th, said it was time to hand over the keys. A humorless laugh. I believed him. Paula didn't move, just listened. He brought 6 men. I brought 2. Thought it was respect. His fingers curled into the blanket. First shot took Rico in the throat. Second was meant for me. I ran. They chased. You know the rest. The fire crackled. Somewhere water dripped. Steady, patient. My own blood, he said softer. My father's sister's son. We grew up together. He used to steal my comics. I broke his nose over a bike. Now, he wants the throne. His voice cracked on the last word. They all do. Paula studied his face in the firelight. The sharp angles looked softer now, the mask slipping. The serpent tattoo curled across his chest like a living thing, but the man beneath it was suddenly, achingly human. I'm sorry, she said. The words felt too small. He shook his head. Don't be. It's the life. You play, you pay. A pause. Didn't think I'd pay it bleeding in an alley. Paula poked the fire, sending up a fresh shower of sparks. I know about family wanting you gone. He looked at her then, really looked. Tell me. She hesitated. The story lived in her bones, not her tongue. But the warehouse was a confessional, and the night was listening. Mom OD'd when I was 6. Dad was never in the picture. Foster system chewed me up, 11 homes in 10 years.
Some were okay.
Most weren't. She picked at a loose thread on the blanket. Last one I was 15. Foster dad thought daughter meant something else. I broke a lamp over his head. Ran. Been on the street since. James was quiet. The fire popped. I learned quick, she continued. You trust, you lose. You love, you lose worse. So I stopped. Kept moving. Kept my hands clean and my heart locked. She met his eyes. Then I found you bleeding under the rain, and the lock busted open. He swallowed. Guess we both don't have a place to go back to. Paula's laugh was soft, surprised. Maybe that's what makes us dangerous. The words hung between them, fragile and true. James reached out, slow, like she might bolt, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. His fingers were calloused, warm. "I'll protect you," he said. The promise was rough, unpolished, but it landed in her chest like a stone in still water. "I don't know how yet, but I will." She wanted to tell him promises were currency she'd stopped believing in. Instead, she covered his hand with hers. "We'll protect each other." Outside, thunder rolled over the river, low and distant. The candles she'd found earlier, half melted, scavenged from a church bin, flickered between them on an overturned crate. Its light carved their faces into gold and shadow, two fugitives sharing the same small flame. James's eyes drifted shut. "Stay," he murmured, already slipping toward sleep. Paula didn't answer.
She didn't need to.
She settled beside him, shoulder to shoulder, the gun within reach, but forgotten for now. The warehouse creaked around them, old bones settling. The world hunted, but here, under a single candle's glow, they were just two broken people finding the first honest mirror they'd ever had. The flame danced. The night held its breath. The candle had burned to a stub, a trembling coin of light between them. Paula's head rested against the crate, exhaustion pulling her under despite the gun in her lap. James slept fitful inches away, breath rasping like torn paper. The warehouse felt smaller now, the shadows pressing in with every creak of old iron. Headlights sliced through the broken windows. Paula jolted awake, heart slamming against bone. Two SUVs, black, matte, no plates, rolled to a stop outside the chain link. Doors opened. Boots hit gravel. She counted 6 silhouettes, moving with military precision. Not cops. Not Marco's crew. These were James's men. She recognized the tallest, broad-shouldered, a silver pinky ring catching the moonlight. Luca, his second in command. Hope and dread collided in her chest. She shook James. "Your guys. They found us." His eyes snapped open, instantly sharp. He pushed up, wincing as the stitches pulled. "Stay low." He reached for the gun. She handed it over without thinking. His fingers closed around the grip, like it was an old friend. Voices drifted through the broken pane. "He's in there. Blood trail from the diner. Marco's dogs are 2 blocks out. We move fast. Boss first. Then the girl. Clean the loose end." Paula's blood turned to ice. Loose end. She crawled to the window, peered through a jagged shard. Lucas stood with his back to her, phone to his ear. "Yeah, she's collateral.
No witnesses."
Order straight from the old man. The old man. James's father. The king who'd signed her death warrant. Paula's breath fogged the glass. She turned. James was already on his feet, swaying but upright, gun raised. His face in the dying candlelight was stone. "You knew," she whispered. The words tasted like rust. "You knew they'd kill me once you were safe."
Silence.
The kind that screamed. She stood, legs trembling. "Say something." His jaw worked. "I hoped," he stopped. "I didn't know for sure. But you suspected." Her voice cracked like thin ice. "I dragged you out of the rain, stitched you with diner thread, hid you from your own cousin, and I'm the loose end?" James's eyes flicked to the door, then back to her. "Paula. Don't." She backed away, boots scuffing dust. "You live in a world where saving someone is a death sentence." He flinched like she'd struck him. "And you live in one that forgot what mercy is." The candle guttered. Darkness rushed in. Paula spun toward the side exit, a rusted service door she'd used 100 times. She was 3 steps away when gunfire shattered the night. The front doors exploded inward. Marco's men, 4 of them, masked, suppressed rifles, poured through the breach. James's crew returned fire from the shadows. Muzzle flashes strobed the warehouse into freeze frames of chaos. Paula dove behind a stack of pallets. Splinters rained. A bullet whined off metal inches from her head. James roared her name, raw, desperate. He was moving, limping but fast, gun barking in controlled bursts. One of Marco's shooters dropped. Another took cover behind a forklift. Luca's voice cut through the din. "Boss, we've got him pinned. Get to the car?" James ignored him. He vaulted a crate, blood blooming fresh on his shirt, and threw himself between Paula and the gunfire. A round caught him high in the shoulder. He grunted but kept coming, dragging her down behind an overturned conveyor belt. "Stay with me," he growled, reloading with shaking hands. "I'm not letting them touch you." She stared at him, ears ringing. "You just took a bullet for the loose end? Shut up and shoot." He pressed the box cutter into her hand, her own, from the freezer fight. She laughed, a broken sound, and peeked over the belt. Luca's men were advancing, laying down, suppressing fire. Marco's crew flanked from the catwalk. It was a slaughter in slow motion. Paula's survival instinct kicked in. She slashed a hanging chain. A pallet of engine parts crashed down, crushing one of Marco's shooters. James used the distraction. 2 shots, center mass. Another down. Luca shouted orders, voice cracking with panic. "Boss, we have to go, now." James met Paula's eyes.
Side door.
"On 3. She nodded.
1.
2. They ran. Gunfire chased them. Bullets sparked off concrete. James shoved her through the service door first, spun to cover. A round grazed his thigh. He staggered but fired back, dropping the last of Marco's visible men. Outside, the night was a war zone. Sirens wailed closer. Cops finally catching the echo. Luca's remaining crew piled into one SUV, engines roaring. They didn't wait. Paula and James stumbled into the weeds behind the warehouse. He was bleeding from 3 places now, face ash gray, but his grip on her wrist was iron. They collapsed behind a rusted shipping container. Smoke poured from the warehouse doors, thick and acrid. Bodies littered the floor inside, friend, foe, impossible to tell in the strobing red-blue of approaching cruisers. Paula's chest heaved. Blood, she couldn't tell, sticky on her hands. James slumped beside her, breath sawing. She looked at him. Really looked. The man who'd shielded her with his own body. The man whose empire had just burned. "I'm in too deep to turn back," she said, voice hoarse. James managed a pained smile. "Welcome to my world." Sirens screamed closer. Smoke curled into the sky like a signal fire. Paula stared at the chaos they'd crawled out of, the city lights flickering beyond. There was no going back. Not for either of them. The warehouse yard was a graveyard of muzzle flashes and dying echoes. Smoke coiled from the shattered doors like ghosts fleeing a funeral. Paula's ears rang with the aftershock of gunfire. Her palms were slick with James's blood. He leaned heavy against the shipping container, one hand clamped to the new hole in his shoulder, the other still gripping the gun like it was welded there. Headlights swept the chaos. Luca's remaining SUV skidded to a stop 10 yards away, doors flying open. 3 men piled out, loyalists, faces Paula recognized from the diner news loop. The driver stayed behind the wheel, engine idling. Luca stepped forward, pinky ring flashing, a fresh magazine slapped into his pistol. "Boss." His voice cut through the sirens. "We gotta move, cops in 2 minutes. Marco's crew is scattered. We finish this." James straightened, slow and deliberate. Blood painted his shirt in overlapping blooms. "Finish what?" Luca's gaze slid to Paula.
Cold. Clinical.
"Loose ends." The word landed like a blade between her ribs. She pressed tighter against James's side, feeling the tremor in his frame. The other 2 men fanned out, weapons raised, not at the warehouse, not at the approaching cruisers. At her. James's voice was low thunder. "Stand down." Luca didn't flinch. "Orders from your father."
No witnesses.
"She knows too much." He nodded at Paula. "Step away, boss. Let us handle it." Paula's heart hammered so hard, she tasted metal. She looked up at James, saw the war raging behind his storm gray eyes. Power on one side, the empire, the code, the throne built on bodies. Compassion on the other, A homeless girl who'd pressed her hands to his wound and refused to let go. He made his choice. James stepped in front of her. The movement was fluid despite the wounds, gun rising in a blur. If anyone touches her, they answer to me. Luca's face twisted, shock, then fury. You'd throw it all away for... The shot was deafening. Luca's pinky ring spun across the gravel, still attached to the finger that had worn it. The second-in-command dropped, a neat red hole in his forehead. The other two froze, weapons half-raised, disbelief carved into their features. James's arm didn't waver. Anyone else? Silence answered, thick, stunned. One man lowered his pistol. The driver gunned the engine, tires spitting gravel as he fled into the night. The last loyalist backed away, hands up, then turned and ran. James swayed. The gun slipped from his fingers, clattered to the ground. Blood poured from the shoulder wound, from the graze on his thigh, from the reopened stitches in his chest. His knees buckled. Paula caught him before he fell. "I've got you." Her voice cracked. She dragged him toward the nearest abandoned sedan, keys dangling, driver long gone in the panic. Sirens screamed closer, red-blue lights painting the smoke in carnival colors. She shoved James into the passenger seat. He was pale as death, lips bloodless, but his eyes found hers. "You should have let me die in the alley." "Shut up." She slammed the door, rounded to the driver's side. The engine turned over on the third try. Behind them, the warehouse burned, flames licking the sky where Marco's men had torched evidence. His empire literally going up in smoke. Rain started as she peeled out, fat, warm drops that blurred the windshield and mirrored the night they'd met. The wipers beat a frantic rhythm. Paula's hands shook on the wheel, but she didn't slow. James slumped against the window, breath fogging the glass. "I just killed my brother," he whispered. Not literal, Luca had been family, in every way that mattered. The code, everything my father built. Paula glanced at him. Tears mixed with rain on her cheeks. She wasn't sure whose were whose. "You chose mercy. That's not weakness." He laughed, wet, broken. "It's suicide." "Maybe." She took a corner too fast, tires hydroplaning. "But it's ours." Sirens wailed behind them, a chorus of consequences. The city blurred, neon, brick, river, until the warehouse was just a glow in the rear view. James's head lolled. His hand found hers on the gearshift, fingers threading weak but deliberate. Paula downshifted, guided the car onto a service road that hugged the Hudson. Rain hammered the roof like 1,000 fists demanding entry. She pulled over beneath an overpass, killed the lights. Darkness folded around them. She turned to him. "You saved me this time." James's eyes were closed, but a faint smile ghosted his lips. "We're even." The rain kept falling. Somewhere, empires crumbled. Here, two fugitives breathed the same air, bound by blood and the mercy that had cost them everything. The sedan 8 miles like a starving thing, headlights carving tunnels through the pre-dawn dark. Paula kept one hand on the wheel, the other pressed to the makeshift bandage on James's shoulder, her flannel, soaked crimson hours ago, now stiff with dried blood. The rain had followed them out of the city, softening to a mist that beaded on the windshield and blurred the world into watercolor grays. They ditched the warehouse inferno 20 minutes behind them. Sirens had faded into the distance, replaced by the low hum of tires on wet asphalt and the occasional rattle of a loose hubcap. New York's jagged skyline shrank in the rear view until it was just a bruise on the horizon. James stirred in the passenger seat, head against the window. His breathing was steady now, shallow, but steady. The fever had broken somewhere past the George Washington Bridge. Paula had found a half-empty bottle of painkillers in the glove box. He'd swallowed 3 dry, no questions. She glanced at him. Bruises bloomed across his jaw like storm clouds. The serpent tattoo peeked above the torn collar of his shirt, ink stark against pale skin. But his eyes, when they opened, held something new. Not the cold calculation of the air. Not the feral defiance of the hunted. Something quieter. Lighter. "Where are we?" His voice was gravel over glass, but it didn't shake. Jersey. Headed north. She kept her tone even. Figured the city's too hot. Cops, Marco, your father. Everyone's got a picture of this car by now. He nodded, slow. Burner plates. Swap them at a truck stop. Used a screwdriver and prayer. A ghost of a smile. Resourceful. Paula's lips twitched. Had to be. Silence settled, companionable but edged with the weight of everything unsaid. The highway unspooled ahead, empty, endless, dawn bleeding pale gold along the tree line. She eased off the gas, let the car drift to the shoulder beneath a canopy of oaks. The engine ticked as it cooled. James turned to her. I need a name. She raised a brow. You've got one. Not anymore. He stared out at the rising light. James Moretti died in that warehouse. Need something the world won't recognize. Paula considered. Eli, she said finally. Short for Elijah. Means the Lord is my God. Figured you could use the irony. He huffed a laugh, real this time, though it cost him a wince.
He tasted it. Ellie Carter.
Sounds like a tax accountant. Better than a Mafia heir with a bounty. He reached across the console, fingers brushing her bruised knuckles. And you?
Paula's fine.
Never had a last name that stuck. She met his eyes. We're ghosts now. Ghosts don't need paperwork. The sun breached the horizon, spilling liquid gold across the dashboard. It caught the dried blood on her hands, turned it to rust. James, Eli, watched the light crawl over her face. I was born into power, he said quietly. Private schools, bodyguards, a seat at the table before I could shave. Every choice made for me. Every door opened with blood money. Paula's throat tightened. She knew this dance. And I was born with nothing, she answered. No crib, no photos, no one to miss me when I vanished. Learned to survive on scraps and shadows. He turned fully now, wincing as the movement pulled at his wounds. But that night, under the rain, we became equals. The words hung between them, fragile and true. Paula felt them settle in her chest like a second heartbeat. She looked at him, really looked. The man who'd killed his brother to save her. The man who'd traded an empire for a girl with $11 and a conscience. Equals. She leaned over, pressed her forehead to his. Their breath mingled, coffee, blood, rain. Equals, she whispered. Eli's hand found the back of her neck, gentle despite the calluses. We disappear, he said. New names, new lives. Canada, maybe. Or further. Somewhere the Moretti name is just a ghost story. Paula nodded against him. Somewhere with trees. And quiet. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. You sure? This isn't the life you saved me for. I saved you because no one else would. She smiled, small and fierce. Turns out, you saved me right back. The sun climbed higher, gilding the mist into halos. Paula shifted into drive, eased back onto the highway. The sedan rolled forward, steady and sure. Behind them, New York was a memory. Smoke and sirens and a throne in ashes. Ahead, the road stretched open, uncertain but theirs. They disappeared into the horizon, two fugitives reborn in the space between mercy and blood. The world still hunted, but it would hunt shadows. Eli Carter and Paula, no last name, drove north, bruised but alive, equals forged in rain and ruin. In a world where mercy is a weakness, she made it his strength. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.